garden graffiti, garden graffiti, garden graffiti, garden graffiti.
What is up, party people? Okay, today we're going to talk about where you should put your garden. Now, first off, before we even go there, I want to ease your mind. No matter what, no matter your growing situation, you will be able to grow food. There's always a way. And please don't be bummed if you don't have the best outdoor situation. If your yard faces the wrong direction, or heck, maybe you don't even have a yard, you can still grow some food. If you have a countertop or a closet, you can grow food. Now, I will eventually make videos on how to do those things in those situations, but for the sake of this video today, I'm going to be talking about where to put an outdoor garden if you have a yard. Okay, so where do we put our garden? Well, we're going to choose a spot for our garden based on three considerations: light, proximity to a water source, and ease of accessibility. Let's first talk about light. Now, light is the most important factor in deciding where your garden should go. So often people do this thing where they move into a new house, find the perfect spot based strictly on aesthetics. Maybe there's this cute little spot that has the perfect little patio next to it for our garden. Hogwash! Don't do it like that, Chad. Okay, you first got to pay attention to where the sun hits. The worst thing you could do is not take this into consideration, do all this work installing a garden, then realize you put the garden in a place that doesn't get a lot of sun. In the northern hemisphere, where I'm coming to you from, and as a reminder, children, the northern hemisphere is the half of the earth that lies north of the equator, the best spot for a garden is facing south. A south-facing garden receives the largest amount of sunlight as the sun passes overhead throughout the day. Now, if this is out of the question, maybe you don't have a south-facing yard, the second best option is to situate your garden on the east or west side of your property, as these orientations also receive a large amount of light. A north-facing garden will receive the least amount of sun. Why is this? Well, roughly, your house will cast a shadow. So if your yard is really close to your house, your garden could spend more time living in the shade than the other directions. Surrounding homes, buildings, trees, and shrubs can also cast shadows for large parts of the day in a north-facing garden. Now, a few things. You will still get light in a north-facing garden, just not as much. And there are plants that actually thrive with less light. Things like lettuces and arugula and kale and cabbage love shade. These are some of my favorite plants to grow. So if I was confined to a north-facing garden, I wouldn't necessarily be bummed out. Second, as I move out from these shadows back into the light, it's important to remember that if you have a lot of land, this might not even be a factor because your garden might be far enough away from your home so shadows cast won't get in the way. But a lot of people watching this probably live in a residential neighborhood, so this will be important to keep in mind. Here's the ultimate test.
Get up early. Go to the spot you're thinking of putting in your garden and monitor it throughout the day to see if it's getting enough sun. We want a spot that gets between 6 to 8 hours of direct sun. So we're gonna come out here every half hour to an hour or so and record if it's getting sun.
Okay, we have light covered. Our next consideration in deciding where we want to put our garden: water. Are you near a water source? Most houses have hoses, but sometimes not close to your garden. If this is the case for you, you can always get a hose splitter. Maybe hook up a 100-foot hose so it can reach your garden. You could also install a faucet on that side of the house. You could also manually carry 5-gallon buckets, like I'm sitting on right here, of water to your garden. You could also, and this is actually what I'm going to be doing, set up some huge barrels to catch water from nearby streams in the rain. My point is, just make sure to take this into account. For most people in residential settings, this is not gonna be a big deal. It should be fine, but I just wanna make sure we don't forget water, because holy geez, water is kind of important. Now, the last thing to think about, and this is an important one, is convenience. I highly, highly recommend putting your garden as close as you can to your house. The closer it is, the more convenient it is. The more convenient it is, the more you will go out there and tend to it, and trust me, this is important. We want to remove any psychological barriers we can and set ourselves up for success. Weirdly, a lot of people do this totally wrong in my view. They have a yard and then they put their garden in the back corner like it has gas or something. But why do it like that? Your garden is going to be freaking beautiful, so why not put it in the center of your yard? Hey, unless you have kids that are playing daily soccer games there, your garden doesn't need to be in the back corner. That's the funny thing. There's a lot of things like this with gardening. There are these traditions, the way people do things that just don't make sense. So yes, if you have to put it in the back because of some other factor, do you, boo, but I super recommend placing it close. Now, let's apply all of this to my future garden. Friends, welcome to the site of my future garden. Isn't this freaking beautiful? Look at all this space. I am not used to having this much space. This is way more space than I've ever had. This is actually, little known fact, the size of a regulation American football field. Okay, it's completely not, but it just feels huge to me because I'm used to gardening in a small little residential space. And hey, if that's your situation, if you have houses around you and just a small little garden plot, everything I've taught you today in this video still completely applies. These are just fundamentals. So let's go over why I'm putting my garden here. So the first thing we talked about today was light. Now, it's not very bright right now. It's because it's like 8 p.m., but this gets enough light. All right, we are facing east. East-facing gardens are totally awesome. That checks out. What else? Well, we talked about shadows. Is your house in the way? Because we have a lot of land, we're on 9 total acres, that's not gonna be a factor. And to triple check that, I got up super early, drank some coffee and took pictures, and we are awesome. What else did we talk about? Well, we talked about water. Now, my situation is gonna be a little more challenging than yours. We have a well. We don't wanna deplete that well, so we're gonna have to catch some rain and do some stuff with the stream. But I've thought about it, that's the point. Last thing we talked about was convenience. This is actually really close to where I'm living. So it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away for me to just get out there and work on the garden. One more thing. So this is an overhead view of the location I will be building a garden in. I shot this with my really expensive drone. Okay, I didn't. This is actually from Google World. I'm going to be building raised beds that are 12 feet long, but this principle would apply to any other rectangular bed, or even if you were planting long rows in your yard. The question before us is, which way should my beds or rows face? We are going to plant them running north to south. All the experts I've read recommend planting in this orientation. Okay, so cool. That's basically it. I know this episode was just a lot of me talking, and that's maybe not as exciting as a beautiful garden episode of me having my hands through soil and planting beautiful crops, but that's completely intentional. Before you do any of that, we need to plan. The worst thing we could do is rush into gardening without knowing what we're doing. And then when it fails, we say, I have a black thumb. You don't have a black thumb, you just didn't make a plan. Yo, architects make blueprints. Businesses make business plans. That's all we're doing. Okay, you all rule. Hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.